You ever watch a NASCAR race and just wonder, what does it really, truly cost to get one of those cars on the track? I'm not talking about the superstars, the big budget teams with massive sponsors. I mean the teams that are really fighting for it, right there in the middle of the pack. Well, you're about to find out, because we are going to pop the hood on the real-world economics of professional auto racing, and trust me, it's a wild ride.
So that is the million-dollar question we're tackling, or maybe multi-million-dollar question. We're going to build a budget from the ground up for a team that consistently finishes somewhere between 15th and 25th every single week. And luckily for us, we've got an incredibly detailed breakdown from a former NASCAR crew chief to guide us. So what does it actually cost?
Yeah, here's a little spoiler alert for you. The numbers are going to be staggering. The whole business model of a race team, it is probably not what you think it is, especially when you realize just how little of the total bill is actually paid for by, winning.
And this is our guide for this whole thing, Aiden McHugh. He lived and breathed this world as a crew chief in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, so he's not looking at the powerhouse teams, the Hendrick Motorsports of the world. Nope. He's focused on the grinders, the teams where a top 10 finish feels like a victory at Daytona. This is a look at the absolute bare-bones minimum cost just to compete. Okay, so before we can figure out how much a team needs to spend, we have to start with how much it actually makes. So let's kick things off by looking at the total prize money a team like this can expect to bring in over a full season.
All right, so here's our starting point. If you took the entire prize purse for all 33 races in the Xfinity Series season and you just divided it up evenly among the 38 teams, this is the number you'd land on, a little over $1.5 million. Now, in reality, the top teams are going to earn more, and the teams at the very back earn less. But for our average mid-pack team, this is a really solid number to work with. Let's call this our total income for the year.
Okay, now for the fun part, spending all that money. And we're going to start with the fixed costs. These are the huge, non-negotiable expenses you absolutely have to pay before you even think about turning a single lap.
And wow, this really shows you just how fast that income disappears. I mean, look at that top-line item, an $800,000 engine lease program. That's where a supplier handles all the maintenance and just gives you the motors. Then right below that, nearly $500,000, just for tires, for your season's allotment of good years. You add in payroll for what is a very small skeleton crew, and all the other essentials, and that bill gets very big, very, very fast.
So here's the kicker. The grand total for just the fixed costs, the stuff you can avoid, comes out to over $2.5 million. You remember that income number we just established, that $1.5 million? Yeah, we already have a pretty big problem.
And there it is, in black and white. Before we've even paid for a plane ticket, a hotel room, or a single repair, our team is already over $1 million in the red. The prize money doesn't even come close to covering the absolute basics.
All right, but the spending doesn't stop there. Now let's get into the semi-fixed costs. These are the things you know you're going to have to pay for week in and week out, but the exact amounts can jump around a bit. We're talking travel and all the little consumable parts.
Now, this is fascinating because it kind of turns conventional wisdom completely on its head. You'd think flying private is some crazy luxury, right? Well, for a race team, it's actually often the more economical choice. See, a team flying private can get to the track, do their thing, and fly home with just one night in a hotel. If they fly commercial, it often means 3 hotel nights, extra rental car days, and when you add all that up, the costs are pretty much identical. But flying private saves the crew 2 full days. It's a no-brainer.
And this is where the budget just gets nibbled to death. I mean, brakes are a huge line item, almost $50,000 a year. But let's just look at the small stuff. $12,000 on nuts, bolts, and rivets. $4,000 on lug nuts, just lug nuts. Even the per diem for the crew adds up. Although, as our source points out, that $25 a day can go a long way when you're buying those famous $2 hot dogs at Martinsville.
Let's just pause on that for a second. $3,760 over a single season. One mid-pack team will go through that many individual lug nuts. It's just the perfect example of how the massive scale of professional racing makes even the tiniest, most disposable parts a pretty significant budget item.
So after all those little things get added up, our deficit has now ballooned by another $300,000. We're now over $1.3 million in the hole, and we still haven't accounted for the one thing that is absolutely 100% guaranteed to happen in racing: crashing.
Which brings us to the variable costs. This is the true wild card in any racing budget.
A single bad day, a single wreck can completely derail a team's finances for months. Yep, we're talking about repairs.
To even begin to understand repair costs, you gotta know the lingo. A door tops down repair, that's what crew chiefs call a pretty moderate crash. It basically means everything on the car's body from the windows on down needs to be completely replaced. And the price tag for just one of these pretty common incidents? A jaw-dropping $30,000 to $40,000.
So how on earth do you budget for something so unpredictable? Well, it's simple, really. You just assume it's going to happen. A lot. You start with a base cost for just normal maintenance and putting fresh sponsor wraps on the car. Then you budget for the inevitable. A mid-pack team will plan on having at least 5 of those door tops down incidents over a season. You add it all up, and the annual bill just for fixing and maintaining the car's body can easily sail past $460,000.
And that brings us to our final operating deficit. After you account for all the day-to-day, race-to-race costs of going racing for one full season, our team is staring at a shortfall of more than $1.8 million. This is the gap that prize money just cannot fill.
So what is the real number? When you put all of these pieces together, all the costs we've talked about and the ones we haven't, what does a team owner actually have to come up with to make it through a season?
$4 million. That's the number our source lands on as the true all-in cost. And that figure covers that $1.8 million operating deficit we just calculated. Plus, it accounts for all the things we didn't even get to list, like renting a race shop, paying the electric bill, and the massive initial startup cost of buying the cars and all the equipment in the first place.
And it's so important to understand what this $4 million actually gets you. This is not for a top-tier championship contending team. This is the absolute rock bottom, bare minimum price to run a competitive, sustainable mid-pack car for 1 year, with a tiny, overworked crew that is stretched to its absolute limit every single week.
When you see it broken down like this, you really understand the immense financial pressure these teams are under. Nearly 2/3 of the entire budget, 63%, is just eaten up by those massive fixed costs before the season even starts. And that variable slice for repairs, that's 13%, but that can grow frighteningly fast with just a couple of bad races.
So we end with this question. We've established that the prize money, that $1.5 million, covers less than 40% of the true $4 million cost of going racing. So that leaves this massive multi-million-dollar gap. And the question is, where does that money come from? Well, it's the sponsors you see on the car, and in many, many cases, it's the drivers themselves who are literally paying for the privilege to race. It's a business model built not on winning, but on finding the funding just to show up.